What up, what up, what up? Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome into the studio here live from the Toyota Lounge. It's the DNVR Rockies podcast. Christian Saez joined by baseball writer with Just Baseball, Kevin Henry. Kevin, first of all, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate you taking some time. And I know you're at home right now, staying out of the snow and all the craziness that's outside. So I appreciate you hunkering down to talk Rockies with us.
Hey, if I've got to be snowed in, who better to be snowed in with? It's all good, man. Absolutely.
It's baseball weather outside, right? That's what they say.
Absolutely. I
feel like
field or something. It's fantastic. Yeah,
it is. It is. I grew up in Seattle, so the snow wasn't as much of the issue, but I grew up playing baseball this time of year in nonstop rain, and so it's a little bit colder, a little bit slipperier outside, but we just played through it. So I don't know if there's a lot of baseball kids growing up in Colorado. If it was me, I'd still be out there playing. Get the wiffle ball bat out. The weather doesn't stop us.
Absolutely. I get that completely. And, hey, why not? Let's talk baseball on a beautiful white day here, no doubt.
It's looking like Christmas outside. Yeah, nothing better to talk baseball on a day like today. And we have some Rockies topics to break down because, look, we're in the midst of an offseason here. And, I think anytime you get into an offseason where your team has underperformed over the last few years, you try to hold on to some of the positives that you can hold on to in the offseason. And look, the Rockies have a couple big bright spots that we get to celebrate this week, and two Gold Glovers, Ezequiel Tovar, Brenton Doyle, and also Ryan McMahon being nominated as well. I feel like we've overlooked Ryan McMahon, at least from the DNVR perspective, just these last few days because of how good Tovar and Doyle have been. But Ryan McMahon, losing out to Matt Chapman, it's something that you and I have talked about before as not being a big surprise, but doesn't take away from the fact that McMahon had an incredible run at third base defensively this year, but it makes sense that we saw the Gold Gloves go to Tovar and Brenton Doyle. But now as we transition into tonight, we've got an award ceremony tonight where Major League Baseball is going to be announcing the Platinum Glove honors going out to one National League defensive position player and one American League defensive position player. And I think for the first time in a while, and I'd like to ask you, when you think the last time we had this conversation for a Rockies player in particular was, but it's for the first time that I think in a long time that we've actually have a possibility of seeing one of the Rockies players win a Platinum Glove. In your recent memory, is there another player outside of Brenton Doyle that we were kind of thinking maybe he might be winning a Platinum Glove? Was Nolan Arenado that guy? Was it maybe Tulowitzki? What was your thoughts on that, in the Rockies' history?
Yeah, Nolan's definitely the most recent, obviously, and and did just that. So, I think that Brenton is probably the best chance the Rockies have had since the Nolan era ended here in Denver. Mm-hmm. And I also think that he's establishing himself really as that defensive pin on the map in Denver, much like Nolan was for years. I think people are starting to realize, and you and I have talked about this, finally the coasters are starting to realize that actually, Doyle exists and that he's actually very good at his craft.
Yeah, and I talked about this a little bit the other day, talking about the depth that he has playing center field. Center field being a very difficult position in the outfield because you're kind of the captain of the outfield, and he's playing at Coors Field, which is historically a challenging outfield to play in. But on top of the fact that he kind of covets this sacred territory in the field by playing center field, he's got depth to his game. He's got a great arm. He's got good speed. He's got agility. I know they don't take this into consideration, but his bat picked up some good offense, this last year. Like, he's kind of the whole package for the Rockies, and he's a guy that was put on the national spotlight really, I think, in the month of July on, where he won the NL Player of the Month for July, and he kind of exploded onto the scene. And then from July all the way through September, it felt like almost every single night, Brenton Doyle was putting on a highlight reel. He was in SportsCenter top 10 because he was robbing home runs night after night after night. And one of my questions that I had for you was going to be, I think it can be a challenge for Rockies players when it's a fan-oriented vote, and the Platinum Glove Award is a fan vote. it can be a challenge for Rockies players because the Rockies are not a franchise that takes a lot of love across the major league, fan base. And so, do you think that Doyle has enough to overcome the disadvantage that he's at playing for a losing team here in Colorado these last couple of years? Do you think he has the ability to rise above that?
If I could take off the purple sunglasses, I say probably not. Honestly, I don't think he does yet. I think go back to Nolan again. I think there were all those years that those of us who were there watching him and realizing what a special talent he was, it still took him time to actually become the starter at third base for the National League, to win that, platinum glove, to do all these different things. And so I think it's going to take time for Doyle to build that up as well. And the good thing is, obviously, he's so early in his career. But I think if he can replicate some of the things that he did this year and some of those highlight reels that you were talking about next year, I think that can really start building toward that. I don't think it's going to happen this year, but I absolutely think you could start looking at that as a very real possibility in 25 and beyond.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I love that you bring up the idea of, looking at it through purple sunglasses, because I made the point of if Brenton Doyle is on the Dodgers or the Padres or even the Braves, like those, much bigger kind of historically winning franchises, I think he's got a better chance, just given the eyeballs that come alongside of that. And it's something we'll talk about here later in the show as well of what, how losing can impact an entire franchise, not just a fan base, not just a team, but when you string 6 losing seasons together, you take a hit, and when it comes to these types of awards. But I do think, given how quickly he jumped onto the scene late in the year, there's a chance. And I think National League, there are a couple other guys that I think could fit that bill, but he's a guy who commands a very challenging post. Do you have any guesses besides Doyle of who we might see on the National League side? It's tough because, I actually think it's so hard when you talk about just one pick out of an entire National League defensive lineup. But if you had to go with one guy, I mean, who would you go with?
That's a really good question, actually. And I probably should have had an answer for that ahead of time. But you got to think those franchises that have those rabid fans, you would think that those will absolutely be the ones that maybe you really start looking at. One thing that I think is going to be really interesting to watch, and I'm just flipping through to make sure that I am not on crack before I answer this question. I think that, Christian Walker, I think that's a very real possibility, even though he's with the D-backs. I still think that he's that guy that has enough pop, and with the D-backs having that much representation, in the postseason, I think he's a real possibility to do that.
Yeah, I had thought, Matt Chapman might be another one of those guys just because of his dominance at that third base spot. I mean, he was kind of unrivaled, and we got a front row seat to watch how good Rymack was this year. And you watch some of Rymack's plays, and you think there's no way this guy doesn't win a Gold Glove, and then you go see what Matt Chapman's doing over at third base in another huge, very rabid fan base, large market in San Francisco. I could see Matt Chapman possibly getting a Platinum Glove, but. I want to transition into talking a little bit about Gold Gloves in the remainder of this first segment, because we've kind of gone through the same handful of players that have been nominated for Gold Gloves for the Rockies over the last few years. Doyle, Tovar, Rymack, being kind of a handful. B-Rod was there not too long ago. But if there's someone that hasn't won a Gold Glove yet that's on the current Rockies roster, is there any guesses that you have in your mind of who might be the next Rocky to get nominated for a Gold Glove in the next couple of years, just based off of what you've seen on the current roster?
I'll throw out Tolia. Obviously, I think that he's got a real shot at that, and I think that could happen as early as next year.
Yeah.
I think that just, again, the strides he made this year, we all knew about his defense, but now he started to get that name out there as well for having the bat also. So I think Tolia is really the one that could. And I'm still convinced that Nolan Jones has a possibility of that somewhere down the line. Yeah. I think Nolan has to get out of his own head a little bit whenever it comes to some of those defensive lapses he had last year. But I think that if he can really get back at the plate to where he was, I think that's going to impact his glove as well. And I really do think that he's a guy that has some very real potential to be in that mix at some point.
Yeah, I'm going to throw out there a way down the road kind of prediction. I don't expect this to happen next year, given the catching situation that we are going to break down here in just a moment. But defensively, if there's a guy on paper that I think stands out to me as someone who, if he can find his stride defensively, and if his bat kind of comes along a little bit more on the back end and he can solidify himself as the starting catcher for the Rockies moving forward, Drew Romo, again, has a long way to go before he's even a starter for the Rockies. But I think from just the prospect look, his defense as a catcher is incredible. I've actually talked to some catching coaches about him in particular, and I've heard the name tossed around that he catches very similarly to a Buster Posey when Buster was back in the day playing for the Giants. And his ball control behind the plate, his awareness out there, his arm strength, his pop time. If he can first and foremost solidify himself as a starter on the Rockies, which is going to take a bat from him, that's what he's lacking right now. But along with becoming the starter of the Rockies at the catcher spot, then get his defense confidence up there. Because another part of catching is you got to be the confident leader. You've got to organize and manage a rotation of pitchers that is very young in Colorado here coming up here. So there's a lot of unknowns, but I want to at least put out there that I think Drew Romo, from the small sample size that we got to see from him this year and the larger sample size that we've seen in the minors, has the potential to be a very, very good defensive-oriented catcher for the Rockies if he gets some of the other things cleaned up.
If he does. And I think you're exactly right. And I think, and you and I have talked a little bit about this, about how he has to earn Bud Black's trust as well.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's there just yet. But if he can put together and really show in an early season, I still think he starts the year at AAA next year. It would not surprise me for that to happen. But I think once he comes back up and once he can actually have a chance to prove to Bud he can handle it both in the clubhouse and behind the plate whenever we all see him, then I think that's a huge step that he'll have to take.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And like I said, we're getting way ahead of ourselves in this conversation, but I just think it's worth recognizing where the defense stands. And the Rockies have historically valued very good defense. The hitting has always been kind of an issue. Pitching has definitely been an issue for the Rockies over, the last 2 decades, but the defense has been there. And I think if you're looking at it from a guy behind the plate, and again, we're going to talk about this as the show continues, Romo has, I think, the highest ceiling defensively for catchers, at least in the prospect world. So we'll see where that goes. But I do agree with you, going back to our earlier point. Toglia, to me, is the guy that I think has the best chance to be a Gold Glover. I think his range was ranked highest in Major League Baseball last year at first base. His defensive WAR was, I think, ranked second in the National League. He had some really good stats. He just didn't meet the minimum requirements of playing time to be able to hit that. And also he did have some kind of early career errors that got in the way, losing a ball in the sun type of thing, not catching first base with his back foot on some plays. Those kind of little things can get cleaned up by Toglia. But I think for a guy who you talk about earning trust of a veteran manager, Toglia has 100% earned the trust of Bud Black, Bill Schmidt, sure, Dick Mumford, anyone who makes decisions in the Colorado organization. Michael Toglia is the new first baseman far and away for the Rockies moving forward, and I think he's going to continue to shine at that corner.
And you talk about earning trust. I know Toglia, you and I have both heard Rymack talk about how that he feels like he can throw about anything over there and Toglia is going to scoop it up.
Yeah.
And whenever you have that from the hot corner over to first base, or, even Tovar might feel that way, I think that's such an important thing that those guys can play a little bit freer on that side, knowing there's a guy like Toglia to scoop up any issues there may be.
That's huge. It is totally huge. So I want to speak a little more infield, though, after the break, because we do have a new infielder in the rotation, Owen Miller, getting signed. I want to talk a little bit about his contract and what that might mean for the Rockies defensively looking ahead for this year. But before we do that, got to give a shout out to some of our sponsors, starting with our friends over at Blue Chew, because at Blue Chew, they're an online service that makes it easier and more effective to get to basically boost your confidence in the bedroom. So we know as you get older, it starts being more challenging to kind of retain that confidence as you continue on in your journey sexually. And so Blue Chew is an online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, Levitra, but at a fraction of the cost and in a chewable form. So the process is super simple. You head over to BlueChew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you can receive your prescription within days. The best part about it is it's done all online. You don't have to sit in an awkward waiting room, anything like that. You can take care of it all online, and you can be ready anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead whenever the moment comes up. So we've got a special deal right now for our listeners. Try Blue Chew for free when you use promo code ALLCITY at checkout. Just pay $5 in shipping. That's BlueChew.com, promo code ALLCITY to receive your first month for free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. We thank Blue Chew for sponsoring this podcast. Also, got to give a shout out to our friends over at Bet365, because at Bet365, we don't do ordinary, and we believe that every single sport should be epic. And we've got an incredible weekend of sports here in Colorado this weekend. We've got Broncos, Buffs. Rams are actually off this weekend, so no Rams. But college football, basketball is back. College basketball is back in full swing, which is one of my favorite sports to bet on, by the way. I am so pumped that basketball season is back. So, Bet365 has you covered on any and all sports you want to bet on. If you download the Bet365 app, you sign up. You can use promo code DNVR365 when you sign up. Deposit $10. Choose between either a bet and get offer by placing a bet of $5 or more and getting $150 in bonus bets, or a first bet safety net offer by placing a bet of up to $1,000. And if your qualifying bet loses, you receive a matched refund in bonus bets. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, back here on the DNVR Rockies podcast with Kevin Henry. So look, we had the Rockies actually make a move this last week, which is nice. We'll take it. I'm always a fan of just motion is good. Making moves, even if they're minor, especially when you're a team that's already announced that you're cutting payroll and things are taking a step back. The best case scenario for me for the Rockies this year, realistically, is that they start making moves. And this is a move that I think it gives some preview into the mindset of how the Rockies are approaching this offseason. So I wanted to bring in an expert besides me to kind of break this down a little bit, because last time we talked about this, it was just me. So I wanted to have a little back and forth on this with Kevin. Earlier in the week, the Rockies signed Owen Miller from the Brewers. He's a second baseman, kind of utility guy, can kind of fit in anywhere in the infield for the most part, especially in that middle infield role. But I want to get your thoughts on this before I dive into kind of my take on this, Kevin. When you saw that the Rockies had brought on Owen Miller for some cash, what was your initial reaction to that? Is that a good thing, bad thing? Were you confused, questioning? What was your initial reaction to that move by the Rockies?
My initial reaction was, this is that veteran middle infielder that Bud Black loves. This is that veteran guy who's been around for a little while. Who's going to at least give some stability. Whenever I checked, he's out of minor league options. He's a guy that is not ever going to really do a whole lot at the plate, but he's going to be a defensive guy. And so I see him as being one of those guys that can fill in at any of the positions when needed. I don't think he's the guy that steps in and all of a sudden Brendan Rodgers is gone now. I still don't think that this is the domino that pushes Brendan Rodgers out of the way. But I think it's at least a step toward, if they decide to do that, and if an Aaron Schunk would take over at second base, or an Amador at some point down the road would take over at second base, then I think Bud would be a lot more confident having somebody like Miller, at least as that backdrop that Schunk was last year. Trejo has been in the past, people like that.
Yeah. No, so are you kind of assuming that we won't see him starting in a Rockies uniform, that he'll just be that depth piece moving forward?
That's my assumption, and I may be way off on this. I'm also a guy that, to be perfectly honest with you, this is a no-risk move for the Rockies. This is a guy that if he doesn't perform in the spring, they can cut him. They can't send him down to AAA. Again, he's out of minor league options. So this is a guy, he's either got to break camp with them and have a designated role, or he's a guy that they can say, well, it didn't work out, and cut him during spring and there's really no harm lost.
Yeah,
So
it feels safe,
It does.
for the Rockies. Like, and look, I know that's kind of where the Rockies are at right now with, you've got to kind of play it safe because you don't have the money to have another Chris Bryant situation. So I understand. I think the issue for a lot of Rockies fans is it's like, there's this understanding that, you can only play it safe for so long before you got to start taking some risks. Now, what those risks look like, we could talk about that here in just a moment. But I'm not against it. It's the first move that the Rockies made this offseason, and we hope that this is a relatively active offseason for the Rockies, even if a lot of those moves are small. I'm okay with this just because you're right. There's not a lot of things that can go wrong with this situation. Right. I just personally didn't see this being a position that we needed depth. If you're looking around the infield and you're saying, okay, we need depth. Well, even if you get rid of Brendan Rodgers this offseason, which it sounds like they're going to try to do from some of the reports, even if you do get rid of Brendan Rodgers, well, you've got Shunk. You've got Amador. Like, you've got some other pieces that can fit in there. You can even shift some of the guys around there. You could put Rymack over at shortstop, Tovar at second. You could kind of move the infield around a little bit more and place someone else at third. There are other options that the Rockies had. It didn't seem like a huge gaping hole that the Rockies were looking to fill this offseason. I guess that was my only surprise. But if you were to see a specific spot defensively that the Rockies needed some depth in, what are your thoughts on that? Do you see the Rockies trying to pad their defense anymore this offseason, or do you think they're going to try to go attack more hitters this offseason or pitchers? Where do you think the Rockies kind of lack most defensively?
Defensively, I still think that you've got to find that guy that you feel comfortable can take over for Brenton Doyle if he gets injured, if he needs a rest day, if there's somebody, I know Sam Hilliard can be that guy, but I'm not sure that he's still at that level that they want to find in center field to take over, for Doyle. I will tell you, I think it would be fascinating to see them bring on like a Harrison Bader or somebody like that, in free agency, a veteran guy, maybe the Jake Cave replacement, but also somebody who Jake was great in right field. But I think if you had somebody that could really take over and help in center a lot, I think Bader would be a really interesting thing for the Rockies to go after this offseason. But I really think that it's about finding depth pieces, though, because when I look, and obviously I'm going to throw this at you, when I look at their lineup for next year, it feels pretty much set to me at least. I don't feel like that there's a lot of starting battles for next season. And I know we're going to talk about catcher here in a little bit. But I just don't see it. So I think if Rockies fans are going to have to understand this is about those depth pieces this year, and that's where I think Owen Miller is. I think Miller was brought in to push Shunk, and I really think that they want to see, can Shunk be that guy to take over as that utility infielder for a full season next year? And I think that's the competition we're looking at.
Yeah, I love that. I actually love that, and I love the way you put that because I agree. Shunk had a good showing towards the end of the year last year, but needs to earn his trust within Bud Black and Bill Schmidt. So I agree with you completely. Let's segue, though, into the catchers, as you just brought up, because the catching situation is another rotating door for the Rockies right now. And I did a segment talking about this, the other day. And again, it was just me. So I wanted to bring you in to have kind of some back and forth on this. And I also noticed in some of the stuff I was posting, there were some Rockies fans who were still kind of like, hey, I don't think we're going to see Jacob Stallings coming back. And what does that look like? So I wanted to ask your thoughts on this whole Jacob Stallings situation. He declined his mutual option. He's a free agent right now. You and I have talked about this in the past, but does anything change after you saw him become a free agent? Does that shift anything in your mind for what you expected to happen to Jacob Stallings this offseason?
To be honest, no. This is exactly how I thought it'd play out. I predict the Rockies will overpay a little bit in order to keep Stallings. Mm-hmm. I think that he is the guy this year that they give a little bit extra maybe to outside of pitching. But position player-wise, I think that they want to keep him and have him be that opening day veteran starter again, as we see what happens with Jerome Romo, as we see Hunter Goodman, continue to grow and evolve behind the plate. I think that this is a guy that they want to have as a part of their future, and I think Stallings knows that as well. I just think it's a money play, and I absolutely believe. be back.
Well, and he's at the end of his career, and he also is in a situation where it's rare for a player of his category at his age to have pretty much all the control in negotiations with your team. I mean, the Rockies have no leverage because Stallings knows that the people they have to replace him have not solidified themselves as big league catchers yet. You've got Drew Romo, who we just talked about, doesn't have a bat that he can show for yet. And then you've got Goodman, who struggled with his offense at the beginning of the year and kind of came alive at the end of the year, but doesn't have the defense to be able to solidify himself as your catcher. And then McIver, who was another guy we had tossed his name out there, he's a free agent now in the minors. So he was listed as a free agent. So he probably won't be a Rocky anymore after this. He probably won't re-sign with the Rockies, just given the history of minor league free agencies and how that kind of stuff goes. So Stallings pretty much has the ball, completely in his favor. So I agree. I do think we're going to see Stallings back as a catcher this next year, and I think it just will serve as some competition to say we got to get Romo or Goodman or someone else ready to go as quickly as possible. But I want to wrap up this segment by kind of shifting our sights into the what ifs here about free agency, because free agents right now, it's the talk of the town, right? And Scott Boras just did his whole breakdowns of who's in the conversations with who and where's Juan Soto going to end up, and all of those things are great. And although I would love to say the Rockies are in a place where they can afford a top 25 free agent, the reality is there's no way, given what they've announced to us as the fact that they're cutting payroll, the shell shock that they're still kind of reeling from of the Chris Bryant deal. So realistically, is there a free agent that could fit within the top 50 that you think the Rockies could possibly have their eyes set on? Or do you think the Rockies are just going to do a kind of a small handful of little deals this offseason and be kind of comfortable with that and try to just develop the guys that they have right now? What are your sights on this offseason free agent-wise for the Rockies? Do you think there's any movement that they're approaching here in the next month or so?
I think that there's a difference between reality and what I would like to see happen. I think the reality is that you're going to see the youth movement in full effect. We discussed that a little bit, and I really do think that that's going to continue. I still would like to see somebody like a Bader, somebody who comes on board as really that veteran guy in the outfield. I would love to see them bring in a veteran left-hander to be in the bullpen. An AJ Minter, I think would be really interesting. I know he's had some health issues and everything else, but I think they need to bring in somebody. And I know Gilbreth is lurking out there, but I still think that they're going to need somebody in case Vodnik doesn't come through as they believe, in case Jaden Hill doesn't take the step, in case Justin Lawrence. I'm worried about where Justin Lawrence is heading. That's a big thing that I'm watching right now. So I think they've got to have, and Bud talked about the growth of the young arms, but I still think they've got to have some kind of veteran out there outside of Tyler Kinley that Bud can go to. And I really do think that is a free agent move I could see them making if they're going to spend money anywhere.
Yeah. It's just fascinating because, you're a team that's rebuilding and reconstructing, trying to get back into a winning position. And at the moment, though, we're looking at all the conversations of predictions of where players are going to go, and realistically, there's none that are in favor of the Rockies, and that's just the reality of where sometimes players the reputation of playing at Coors Field, playing at altitude. There are other factors that come into that, but that is something that the Rockies have to contend with. And I will say, though, I do think that if the Rockies don't end up making a big free agent push in this offseason, it's not the end of the world, because you are developing some guys, and we're going to talk about this after this next break, that you're in a position where you are starting to feel confident about some of the guys in your farm system that are starting to make their way up to the big leagues and what that can look like. So I don't think it's the end of the world if the Rockies don't pick up a big free agent or a good free agent, I should say. But I don't see them spending more than, I don't know, to put a number on it, $50, $75 million max. Even that might be a little high.
I mean, even if you put a Santander, even if you put somebody who's among those top bats that you could get in that actually makes sense for the Rockies. Again, Soto would be awesome, but it ain't going to happen. So, so let's dial it back a little bit. Does that equate to more wins that would actually put the Rockies in a position this year to do anything? The answer is probably no. So why not really test what this team has down on the farm and really see what it does? You can still be competitive. It may not be a 500 season, but you can still at least see what there is. And then you say, okay, in 26, what does that mean? And I think that's really the thing. And I know Rockies fans are tired of talking about bridge seasons, but it feels like this is another one of those just to see what the Rockies actually have in 25.
Yeah, well, we got a little glimpse into Bud Black's eyes of what he expects to see from next year as he sent a letter out to Rocky season ticket holders. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in just a moment. But before we get into that, got to give some love to one of our sponsors. Our friends over at Game Time do incredible work, because if you're in the business of buying tickets, whether you're going to a concert with friends, whether you're going out to watch a football game, basketball, sporting event of any kind, Game Time has you covered. They make it easier and more affordable to get tickets than with any other ticket marketplace that's out there. And they have this feature on the Game Time app called Game Time Picks. Basically helps you filter through all of the extra fluff that you have out there. You know how hard it can get and how complicated it can be to buy tickets sometimes. You're going to a Broncos game or an Avs game, and it's like $50 on the screen, and you're like, okay, great, I'm ready to check out. You go click to check out, and next thing you know, it's $100 with all the extra fees and all of that kind of stuff. With Game Time app and with the Game Time Picks, it filters through all of the fluff so you get real-time pricing. You can see everything that you need to see to get the best information possible so that you can make the best decision when you want to go out and spend your hard-earned money on going to a sporting event. So check out the Game Time app. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code DNVR for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, create an account, redeem code DNVR for $20 off. That's the Game Time app. And what time is it? It's game time. Well, we also got to give some love to our friends over at Coors Light, because right now, even though it is freezing cold outside and it's a little gloomy, there's still some good times to enjoy a nice, cold, refreshing Coors Light. I know I was hanging out at the DNVR bar last night and enjoying, watching some good basketball on TV, and it felt like it was 100 degrees inside most places you go. So even though it's a little cold outside, when you get inside a sports bar or wherever, it's still nice and refreshing to have a cold, refreshing Coors Light. And really, Coors Light pairs well with anything, whether you're enjoying a beer with some friends at a bar, or going out to watch an Avs game or a Nuggets game. Whatever it is, you got to embrace that chill mindset. Crack open an ice cold, refreshing Coors Light. So make the most out of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instant Cart by going to CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Please celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company in Golden, Colorado. All right, back here on the DNVR Rockies podcast. Before we talk about this season ticket letter that Bud Black sent out, I got to ask you, Kevin, because I know you're in you cover more than just the Rockies. You jump around. You cover a lot of different teams. Did you see that the Rays had inquired about Juan Soto and that they were looking into getting Juan Soto this year? Is there any chance that Juan Soto ends up in Tampa this year?
No, I mean, God bless the Rays for throwing it out there. I mean, I know they're still trying to figure out where they're going to play next year, but I just don't see him going anywhere outside of the metropolitan areas, New York or LA. I mean, let's be honest. There's three teams that are really in the hunt for him, and probably realistically only two. Yeah. But kudos to the Rays for at least saying, yeah, we're going to try this, because I think every team, as we joked earlier, he says he's open to all teams, but we know there's only about three that maybe are realistic.
Yeah, I saw someone say that, it's like when you go on Zillow and you're looking at multi-million-dollar mansions, but in reality, you can only afford a $400,000 house. It's like that's the idea. Like when my wife and I sit there and we're searching through, like, ooh, 6 bedroom, 6 bathroom out in Aspen. Yeah, that's pretty sweet. Perfect. We're in. But in reality, that's not going to happen. So good on the Rays for throwing it out there. I would love to see the Rockies say, you know what, we're going to go after Juan Soto hard this offseason, but there's just no realistic world.
Fantastic. Seriously. Yeah. I'm still surprised that the Jays aren't going to do more. I really thought they might be that dark to try to push for him, but oh well. He'll probably come down the pinstripes or Queens. We'll see.
That's the way it goes. I could see a Philly reunion as well, but any of those big teams, Juan Soto, it's going to be the story of the offseason. So, speaking of offseason stuff, though, so Rockies season ticket holders, the ones that are still holding on to their season tickets this year, got a message from Bud Black. He sent out a letter to season ticket holders. Riley, I sent you that photo. We can throw that up there on the screen. I'm not going to read every single part of it, but there are a couple quotes that I wanted to throw out there and just kind of get a reaction on, because I do think it's always interesting to see. And in reality, we haven't seen a lot of statements made by the Rockies management, whether it be from Bud Black, Bill Schmidt, or even Dick Monfort after this losing season. And I had talked about it on my show, kind of in a critical way, saying, I'm surprised we didn't hear from Bill Schmidt or Dick Monfort in just acknowledging and addressing the losing season and committing to being better next year. But I want to start by kind of highlighting a quote that Bud had here, where he said, quote, "I'm more confident about 2025 than I've ever been since our back-to-back 2017-2018 playoff seasons. We're building a roster to be proud of, and I'm hopeful you'll see our efforts pay off next year," end quote. And Riley, you can probably take that down off the screen. So, Kevin, I wanted to get your thoughts on that because, look, optimism's great. And Bud said what he needed to say, right? I mean, it's not like he's going to send a season ticket email out saying, yeah, we're, next year's going to suck, so buckle up. Of course he's going to say we're going to be good. But did you, in being in the clubhouse and in being in the locker room and talking to the players and talking to the coaches, did you feel that same sense of confidence that Bud Black is alluding to in that quote? Did you feel that confidence in some of the conversations you had with players?
I think yes and no. Let me answer it that way. Yes, in the fact that I think that this is something that has to be said. I think this is something that has to be, hope springs eternal in the spring, right?
Absolutely.
And I really do think this is the offseason where we start talking about what could be the guys who could take next steps, all that stuff. So I see the possibility of it, and I see where you've got to tell these guys after back-to-back seasons with 100 losses that, hey, we've got to look ahead. We can't look back. We got to move forward. So I see it in that respect. But at the same time, I think that there's a step, in by Rocky season ticket holders, by those who watched on TV. There was a lot of statements last year about, is this really the right direction? It doesn't feel like that this is going to be a competitive year. So I think for Bud to come out and say that, I think it was important from a PR standpoint. Absolutely. Yeah. But I am really curious, and some of the guys that he mentions down here, and we'll probably talk about that in a minute, but the starting pitchers, I think that he talks about the bullpen arms. I can genuinely sense that there is some excitement from Bud about that, but I also think there's trepidation knowing, can they live up to it once they actually reach the MLB level?
Yeah, and I think for me, because yes, you're right, from a PR standpoint, that is the right thing to say. And I will die on this hill if I sat down in this studio with Bud Black, Dick Monfort, and Bill Schmidt, and I asked them straight up with a lie detector strapped up to them, do you guys want to win? They're all going to say yes, of course. Like, anyone who says that they're not committed to winning doesn't know just baseball in general. Like, they are going to try to win. It's the level at which they're going to try to win that I think can be a challenge for Rockies fans to swallow sometimes. And I'm right there with them on that. I think that's where it trips up a lot of people. But I think we have to be realistic in saying, what does a successful season next year look like? Is that going to be making it to the playoffs? Well, sure, we'd love to compare this to a 2017-2018 team, but in reality, so many other things have to fall in line for us to even think of making it to a wild card. And on top of that, you pair into that the equation that we're playing in the NL West, the toughest division in arguably the history of baseball. It's going to be very realistically challenging to be a playoff team next year. So what's a step in the right direction where we can finish the year saying, you know what, we didn't get to the playoffs, but Rockies fans felt good about what they saw. What do you think that looks like next year in a way to determine if the season is successful or not, realistically?
Realistically, I think it's a matter of these young guys coming up and were they able to handle the pressure? Were they able to actually perform? And I think more than anything else, people are going to be looking on the mound to answer that question. I think everybody's excited about these young pitchers coming up, but we've got to be honest. What happens if something, Palmquist comes up, Dollander comes up, and they don't perform up to expectations? So that's where I think there's going to be a lot of tempering once we get towards spring training and everything else of those expectations. But I absolutely think that your success meter for next year is that we're not having the same questions next offseason that we're having right now about what if, what could. We know the guys are going to be there, and it's about them taking that next step.
Yeah, and I feel like for me, because I've said, I think my most, like one of my wins and losses keys to success next year is just get close to 500. Like we can't have another 100-loss season. You can't be well under 500. Like I want to see improvement from that angle, and that's just a wins and losses thing. But if you're looking at it more from, I guess a player perspective, a development perspective, I want to start to see an identity for the Rockies come to life. I think they've been a team that has frustrated fans because their identity has felt very, convoluted, very complex, very vague. It's like, are we a team that hits home runs? Are we a team that's just built off of defense? Are we are we a team that has a hard throwing bullpen? Like what, we're seeing like bits and pieces of good elements to a good team, but there's no full identity to this Rockies organization right now. And if you look back into 2017 and 2018, the 2017, 2018, like if I could put an identity to that group of guys, it was scrappy, right? Like, and that's kind of been the Rockies in general, like even in their World Series run. Like they're just a scrappy team that, like, on paper they're not the Dodgers, but they're a team that can just eke out wins. Look at the Diamondbacks, look at even the Mets, aside from their payroll. Like that's what the Rockies, I think, have been in those years. So is that the vibe that they're trying to become next year? Or are they going somewhere else? Like I just want to start to see a little bit more of an identity kind of come to life next year for them.
I think that's a great point. And I'll ask you, if you could give me the identity of the Pittsburgh Pirates right now, what would it be? It's Skeens, right?
Yeah.
It's Skeens, it's Jared Jones, it's young pitching. So, and Skeens turned Pirates baseball into something that when he was starting, you had to watch. The velocity, the dominance, everything else. And so I think if the Rockies can actually find somebody like that all of a sudden makes them must-watch baseball. Even the Pirates didn't do well this year, let's be honest here, but Skeens still put them on the map. And so I think to have something like that, like you said, an identity, I think that would be a huge step in the eyes of Rockies fans. Yeah,
and what does that look like? Maybe it is the pitching. Maybe when Dollander gets up there and you can kind of clean up that bullpen, you start to see a pitching rotation that can keep you in late inning games. Or maybe it is the fact that, our pitchers aren't great, but we've got a really good core of 1 through 7 hitters that can get on base pretty much every game, that can, send the ball into the seats every once in a while, can steal bases. I don't know. The defense isn't going anywhere. The Rockies have great defense. So I think it really comes down to, do you become a team that really embraces the hitting side of things, or do you become the team that really embraces the pitching side of things? I think Dollander has a chance to be a Paul Skeens-esque name for the Rockies. Obviously, a ton of that has to be earned along the way. But I think that's just where they're lacking right now, where they have not hashed out an identity for their program. And I think next year is a crucial year for them to be able to start to at least build that conversation of like, this is the way our franchise is headed, and give us another year and we might be looking pretty good.
Agreed completely. And you think back to those playoff teams, the offense had tent poles, for lack of a better term. There was DJ, there was Nolan, there was Cargo, there was Chuck. There were guys that you knew were going to hit. And I still think that the Rockies have to find that they're going to get a lineup where, on consistent basis, multiple guys are going to hit. It's not just going to be Brenton Doyle. It's not just going to be Mac getting on a hot streak, whatever it might be. It's going to be for consistency, they're going to have to hit night after night after night. And so I think that that's as important for them getting back as any name or anything else. And Bud's going to have to figure out, and they're going to have to figure out this offseason, a lot of the holes in the swings and how they're going to be able to repair those.
Yeah, the offense was a big question mark that definitely needs to be addressed. Kind of a surprise to a lot of people as well, given the ceiling that a lot of the hitters have in that lineup. But I'm going to take our last break here and wrap up the show after this, talking a little bit about the MLB draft. We've got a lot more time to talk about the draft, but we're going to start to preview that draft after this break. But before we do, got to give a shout out to our friends over at Breck Distillery. And look, I am a huge bourbon fan. I actually just got a couple Breck Distillery, bourbon flasks to add to my bar here, especially now that it's winter and it's whiskey season, as I like to call it. And look, if you're a whiskey guy or girl, Breck Distillery's got you covered. They are the best bourbon whiskey here in Denver, at least. They're the world's highest distillery, founded in 2008. They're widely known for their bourbon whiskey. And if you've gone to any of our tailgates either as well, we've got some incredible Broncos tailgates, CSU, CU tailgates, and we always have Breck Distillery shots. I have these vivid memories of my first Broncos tailgate that I came to when I moved to Denver with my wife a couple years ago, and I did a shot ski with a bunch of the DNVR crew, and it was Breck Distillery, and I remember thinking, wow, that was pretty good whiskey. So, take it from me that Breck Distillery has some incredibly good spirits, but even if you don't want to take my word for it, they are award-winning, so you could take the Critics Award from it as well. So right now, they've got a pretty cool deal. You can enter to win 2 tickets to Denver Broncos games at the Breckenridge Bourbon Whiskey Suite. Share how you celebrate the Broncos by posting your photos on social media using hashtag BroncosBourbon. Also use promo code DNVR at checkout for free shipping on all orders over $99. Learn more at BreckenridgeDistillery.com. We can't go any further without giving some love to our friends over at Circle K, because Circle K is more than just a gas station, and they have incredible food, snacks, drinks. Their fountain drinks are to die for, but they've also got some really cool discounts because they've got the free membership called the Circle K Inner Circle. And I always say, it's more than just a gas station because of that membership. You can get discounts on gas, you can get discounts on food, snacks. I actually stopped at a Circle K when I was driving out to Alamosa last weekend, and on my way back got to stop at a Circle K and pick up some of their good breakfast food that they had there, and also get a fountain drink on my way out back to Denver before all the weather came in. So yeah, you can join and enter become a part of that inner circle by entering your phone number and email. It's fully free. You get discounts after you sign up. With the Circle K app, you can receive 25 cents off per gallon on your next 5 fill-ups. So find it under the app. In Inner Circle/offers. Download the Circle K app. Sign up for the Inner Circle for exclusive offers. New offers, purchase clubs, and sweepstakes are uploaded weekly. All right, wrapping up here on the DNVR Rockies podcast. We're still about a month away, but getting close to the draft that's coming up here, the lottery draft that is coming up. December 5th, I believe, is the lottery pick. Am I correct in saying that? It's December 5th?
I believe that's right. Yeah, winter meetings. I know it's right in there. So, yep.
It's crazy how fast that's coming. I feel like it's, I feel like I feel like I started working at DNVR just like yesterday. It was like a month ago, and now, now it's already getting close to winter meetings and the draft. It's just been a roller coaster here over the last 6 months, but it is that time of year. The snow's falling, winter meetings, draft conversations, and the Rockies are in the news because they might have a chance to pick up that number one overall draft pick. They have a 22% chance of winning the draft lottery, which is the most in Major League Baseball. First of all, do you think that can give the Rockies fans some hope, as we enter into this month of December?
I will tell you, that's going to be the biggest thing to come out of winter meetings for the Rockies' perspective is going to be where they finish in the draft. I fully expect it. Bill Schmidt will give his State of the Union most nights, that we all kind of listen to him. But I absolutely think everybody in the Rockies Nation, for lack of a better term, is going to be out there seeing where they finish in the draft. And then it's going to be about what comes next. So it's going to be interesting, yeah.
So I was actually reading, I believe Patrick Lyons with Just Baseball had a good article on kind of previewing this draft and what's to come. And obviously the big name that gets thrown out there in all of this conversation for the Rockies is a reunion for the Holiday family. Picking up Ethan Holiday, who is expected to go or anticipated to possibly go number one overall in the upcoming draft. And if the Rockies do get the number one draft pick in this lottery pick, there's a chance that they end up going after Ethan Holiday. Now, the interesting thing about Ethan is, I think there's a lot of conversation about how the Rockies approach this draft. And so I'll kind of keep it vague since we've got a long time before we really start getting into the weeds of who the Rockies go after and that kind of stuff. But if you see a trend over how the Rockies have drafted in years past and also what you think the Rockies could possibly do this upcoming year, would you be surprised to see them go after a guy like Holiday in this upcoming draft?
Not at all. I think he makes sense not only from the emotional standpoint, but also from the potential standpoint. I mean, you read all the reports about him and what he could do, and you saw how fast Jackson made it to the MLB level. Mm-hmm. I absolutely think that could be the Rockies' play if he's available and if they have that opportunity. Well,
you talk about a guy that kind of became must-watch baseball towards the latter half of the year. You were comparing Skeens with the Pirates. Jackson was that for Baltimore. Now, granted, Baltimore's a great team, and they're a playoff team that I think has underperformed in the playoffs year after year recently. But throughout the regular season, Jackson Holiday was one of the most exciting offensive rookies to grace the world of baseball this year. And so if you look at what he has done, granted, it's hard to say that Ethan would follow in his exact footsteps because everyone's different, obviously. But just given that alone and what Ethan has shown that he's been able to do in high school, in his current play in baseball, 6'4", a big power hitter. Even Matt Holliday, his dad, when we talked to him, said, hey, Ethan probably has me beat in power just for where he's at right now. He has another potential to be a must-watch player if the Rockies were to draft him and he was to make his way into a big league roster within 2 years. He could be a all eyeballs turn to Colorado type of guy, and I think that's why the Rockies are in favor of picking him up.
Absolutely. I think he's not only a cornerstone, could be a cornerstone, let's be honest, could be a cornerstone, but also, like you said, he draws attention. And the Holiday name, everything that goes along with that, and the potential, again, for him to not only follow in Jackson's footsteps with a quick path to MLB, but if he has that power and is playing at Coors Field, then absolutely. There's a lot of opportunity there, I think, to say, hey, this is a guy worth watching. Even for you East Coasters, we're playing late for you. It's worth staying up for to watch.
Yeah, I can't imagine watching any sport on the East Coast. I was actually watching Gonzaga, one of my teams, Gonzaga. They were playing against Baylor for men's basketball the other day, and that game started at 9:30 in Colorado. And I'm like, if I lived on the East Coast, I am no chance I'm staying awake for that game.
Absolutely. No, I'll be honest. I hate traveling to the East Coast and then having to figure out, what time everything's going on. Right. I'm getting too old to stay up that late.
I know, like 11:30 start time. If you're trying to watch that game in New York, if you're a Gonzaga basketball fan out there living in New York and you want to watch that game, good luck to you. You're staying up till 3 a.m. for that game. Same thing with when CU played CSU last year and the game ended at midnight here. It's like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, why are we staying up this
all
late?
those night games in Boulder doesn't help the East Coasters fall in love with Dion anymore. That's for sure. So.
Well, and look, the Rockies are a team that, especially with the rise in streaming and all of that kind of stuff, it's become harder and harder to. I wouldn't say harder. Harder is the wrong word. It's become more of an investment to physically and emotionally to want to watch the Rockies, a team that has been losing over the last 6 years, losing bad over the last couple of years. And, and I think that, we're talking about what's the shift need to be to make the Rockies a team that's worth investing in for the fans again, because we talked about the Bud Black email, going out or the letter going out to Rockies season ticket holders. I think that was the right things that needed to be said by him. But until the Rockies become a team that puts a good product out on the field, they're going to continue to see the streaming go down, revenue go down, all of this vicious cycle that we're starting to get caught up in is rolling right now. And I wanted to make the point here, kind of going into a grim, moment here to finish the show. The cutting payroll situation because of TV revenue being down this year should be, in my eyes, a huge wake-up call to the front office of the Rockies and to the management in the Rockies organization to say, look, we are officially in this vicious cycle now of bad on-field product equals, low revenue equals bad money, which equals prospects and players not wanting to come sign for us, and it just kind of goes in circles. So these next couple years are crucial for the Rockies to change the narrative around who they are as a franchise, to be able to go put a winning product out on the field with guys like Charlie Condon, Ethan Holiday, if he was to sign with the Rockies, Chase Dollander, Michael Tolia, Brenton Doyle. Like, these guys need to be big and make Colorado a must-watch type of team.
I agree completely. And I think these next couple of years are really going to determine which way this franchise goes moving forward. And I think that, you said it earlier, you cannot have another 100-loss season. One was okay, 2 is, but 3 is just, I think it's unacceptable. And I think, again, everybody wants to win, but they've got to figure out a way to make sure that they are on the right path and more eyeballs start turning to those Rockies games, not only in person at 20th and Blake, but also, no matter where you're watching them from.
And I do believe that the Rockies have a chance to be an incredibly exciting team, and I'm going to use your term. I'm looking at it through purple tinted glasses. I get it. I cover the team. I'm a fan of the team. I live here in Colorado. Like, absolutely, I want the Rockies to be successful. But I do, from a just sheer baseball business perspective, I feel like Colorado has a potential as a market to be a really fun baseball team. Like I said, if you can get guys like Chase Dollander to become a Paul Skeens type guy, if you can get Charlie Condon to be where he's expected to be, if you bring in a good draft pick in this upcoming draft, like, you keep Brenton Doyle healthy, you keep Tovar going well, you keep Tolia, these are guys that you can build a franchise around, and it can look like the 2017-2018 team if you get a couple of those pieces to fit into place. But you have to change the narrative around the team first to even just create a winning mentality for guys out there. And I think that's important this offseason for them to continue to build on as they go into next year.
And it's important that, in August, they're not completely turned off by everybody and it becomes pure Broncos all the time. I mean, in 2017, 2018, it was magical in downtown because people were actually still invested in the team. And I think that whenever that August 1st comes and practice really kicks in for the Broncos, the Rockies have to figure out a way to keep eyeballs on them as well. And I think that how that goes early in the season is going to determine, are we going to have any reason to watch in August and beyond? Outside of me and you, of course, who are going to be there in the press box anyway.
Yeah, well, I will say, I have this thick winter Rockies bomber jacket that I can never wear during the season because it's always 1,000,000 degrees throughout the middle of July and August. And then by the time it cools down in October, the Rockies have been eliminated and I can't wear it. So I'm going to put it out there right now. If and when the Rockies make it to Rocktober again, I am not going to wear this Rockies bomber at all. until the Rockies make it to October baseball, even if it's 90 degrees outside, I will finally put that nice Rockies winter jacket on and rock that every single postseason game, because it's sitting there waiting for some cold weather baseball, and we just haven't had the chance to use it yet. So,
yet another reason to wait to want Rocktober back. I tell you,
that's the most important thing. Yeah,
absolutely. No, bring it on. I'm ready.
I am ready. Well, Rockies fans are ready. Look, there are reasons to be excited for next year. It's just a matter of, can the Rockies take advantage of those? Can we boost up those reasons to be excited and add some more other pieces to help give that depth? So we'll continue that conversation all off season long here on the DNVR Rockies podcast. First and foremost, though, gotta thank Kevin for taking an hour out of your day to spend some time with us. Kevin, where can the people follow you? Find all of your articles. You do incredible work. Give all your socials and updates on that.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, absolutely. KGH23 on X, and absolutely follow me on Just Baseball over there with Patrick Lyons, Renee Deckard, some of our friends that we get to hang out with in the press box most nights. So yeah, come on board. We'd love to have you.
I'm a big member of our Rockies family here, and we always like having you on the show, Kevin. Thanks again, guys, for hanging out with us. We're wrapping things up here. Enjoy your weekend. Stay safe. Don't go outside. Bunker down. It's going to be a long weekend, but enjoy some other good sports. We'll be back with you guys on Monday for more DNVR Rockies baseball.
We all silly like the mayor.